Hey guys, welcome to the new channel, or new rebranded channel, Psycho Style, formerly known as Project Garage. Today, we are going to be talking about 350Zs and G35s and engine oil. Today we have Charlane's car. Charlane is the owner of Slammed Enough, and this is his drift car, so it gets drifted, it gets street driven, it gets beat on a lot. The point of this video is to kind of inform you guys on the importance of engine oil in your 350Z or your VQ powered vehicle. This engine is one that we have just replaced about a week ago because the old motor was having compression issues. A lot of these cars have compression issues, and that's when they start burning oil. And it's not an inherent problem with the VQ, it's just a lot of bad maintenance that a lot of people tend to do on these, and that can wear on your piston rings and all kinds of other parts we'll get into. When we did the engine swap, we filled this up with an oil that I'm not going to tell you yet, but that is oil that's currently in here, the same brand. And we are going to be switching to driven racing oil. So let's get started. We're just gonna do a quick oil change on this, and we can talk about driven, we can talk about your VQs and how to keep them from blowing up, because believe it or not, these are very reliable engines. You just have to keep the oil in here. All right, so we got the car up on the lift. Before we get the oil in there, let's talk about VQs real quick. VQs have a bad reputation for blowing up, and people always say they're terrible engines, but realistically VQs are very reliable engines, and you can beat on them week after week at the drift events and drive them back home. What happens with a lot of VQs is that they are maintained improperly, whether that's using the wrong oil or not following your oil change intervals or just running the crap out of it with oil leaks. All of these things are going to contribute to oil consumption issues with the VQ35. The main concern being piston rings. After you starve those piston rings of oil and proper lubrication, they start to wear down, you start to lose compression. That pressure starts to build up in your crankcase. That crankcase pressure blows more oil out of your PCV. So if you happen to take your intake pipe off and notice there's oil in there, it's because you have excessive PCV ventilation, and that's because of excessive crankcase pressure. Some pressure is normal, which is why the PCV valve, that's the reason it exists, is to release some of that pressure, but there shouldn't be so much pressure that oil is shooting out into your intake. Some oil there is normal, but it shouldn't be an excessive amount. Using a catch can is a good thing to do in this scenario to catch some of that excess oil so it does not just go into your intake and keep burning and burning and burning. So crankcase pressure is one issue. The other issue is the solenoids on the front of the engine are oil controlled. The oil plays a large factor in this, obviously, and if your oil is already broken down, if your piston rings are letting blow-by gases past them, your oil is getting contaminated, it's breaking down faster, and that oil is not going to be able to actuate these solenoids in the way that it's supposed to. And this might sound like really nitpicky stuff, which it kind of is, but all of these small things compounded together can cause a VQ to not run right, and then if you're out there dogging it when it's in a bad situation like that, definitely gonna blow it up. So that's why we're using this quality oil from Driven Racing, which is local, and this is their LS30 5W30 engine oil, which they actually market towards LS engines, given that LS engines usually are taking a bigger beating. Works out well for the VQ35 because VQ35s tend to get hot when you're running them, which is fine. It's a normal temperature range that they can be in. But if you're using a cheap oil, that oil is not gonna hold up and it's gonna break down, and before you know it, you're gonna think your oil is fine, but it's really not doing its job right. So the LS30 is made to work well with the VVT systems. It has Driven's proprietary additive package in there, and it has a very high shear strength, which is what you want in an oil. You want your oil to have a high shear strength when it gets hot, so that it can still lubricate your whole engine and still have that thin film over all the pieces while you're running it. So that is the oil we're going to be using. For the filter, we're going to be using a Wix XP filter. This might sound weird to you. This comes from O'Reilly's. These Wix filters, we've tested them. We use Wix racing filters on GTRs and they do great. And they're also locally available. So we're going to be using the Wix XP filter for the 350Z. All right, we got it filled up with oil. Let's go see what this thing does on the track.
Shout out to Driven.